Hi, this is Hart, and this is the very beginning of my fourth quilt. I've learned a couple of lessons, and I've already forgotten a couple of lessons I've learned in making these quilts, but for someone who's almost a beginner, I was thinking it might be helpful for you guys if I do a full-on beginner one-on-one on making a quilt. I will tell you that I design my quilts around what the fabric is that I've purchased instead of designing them around beginning quilting. And I'll even go through that process with you because I haven't even done it in my head yet. So I'll take this in steps. First thing, and if you've already quilted before, skip past this video because this is truly the basics. You'll see what I mean. But first things first, what is a quilt? I mean, we see quilts in the store, but what is a quilt? Well, a quilt simply means fabric on the front, so you have the front of the quilt front. Then you have the interior of the quilt, which is usually batting, but is not always batting. And then you have the back of the quilt, or vice versa. In my case, this will be the front of the quilt, which I will make into quilt blocks, which in my case will be 12 by 12 squares. And the only reason I do 12 by 12s is because I really am a beginner and I need to make sure that it all fits to a size that makes sense. Then, so this is my front, this is my middle, and this will be my back. I have more fabric than I need because I love fabric scraps. I make books and such, so you do not need this much fabric. So I have 1, 2, 3, 4 yards of fabric in this small amount. I shouldn't say small, this is way more than I need, but it's fabulous to have that much extra. And then I have 2 yards for my backing. And in here, this is actually, I wrote this down for myself, so I wasn't going to waste your time and look at this. I forgot already. Oh, there we go. 38 inches by 50 inches is my batting. It's what I have left over from when I made something else, which is fabulous because that's the size I'm going to make this quilt, is according to the size of the batting. And that works out because a crib mattress, and I wrote this down, is 26 inches by 48 inches. So that makes this almost the perfect crib quilt, 38 by 50. So it'll be a little bit wider and a little bit longer, just a couple inches longer, but a little bit wider than the crib. And it'll be a good quilt for the baby to lay on once the baby's old enough to do tummy time. So, any case, I'm excited to get started. Let's start talking about the other basics of quilting. What do you need to have on hand? Now, some people will say I need more tools than this. Some people will say I need less tools than this. But these are the tools that I use. Okay, one, and I don't have it on my table, this is my sewing machine. These are the needles I'm using. And I also have a quilter's foot, the walking foot, that's already on my sewing machine. Okay, and so I have 5 Microtex sharp needles, and I don't know anything about my sewing machine. I just know that when I learned to quilt, the lady told me this is what I buy, so that's what I bought. Okay, this is the loveliest thing, and this is my rotary cutter. I'll even show you how to replace the rotary blade because I might as well since I need to replace it now, so I saved that for showing it to you. This is I only use it for material scissors. That's it, only material. Okay, I lied. Sometimes I pull it out when I shouldn't, but it's supposed to be only material. Measuring tape. Now in this case, I have blue chalk. I also have a white pencil, but my white pencil isn't going to do me much good except for on the red fabric. So I have 2 different colors. One for when my fabric is not white, and one for when my fabric is white. I have in this case, I guess this is all I had on hand, or I could use a pencil, but the pencil may not show up as much. But I have this so I can draw out things for you if I need to draw anything out for you. and my quilt layout. So I'm going to draw out what my quilt layout's going to be once we get there. I have a stitcher ripper, one for fixing things and others for helping things get pushed through on the walking foot if I need to. This is to trim my thread if I feel like using that instead of the thread trimmer on my sewing machine. This is my iron. You do not have to have a special pretty iron like this. I bought this particular iron in the store to support the lady who was teaching me to quilt. Now, I do encourage you to have a piece of paper to jot your notes down on or any lessons you've learned, because odds are if this is your first quilt, it won't be your last quilt. Because it is fun. The most stressful part for me is I'm used to cutting paper. Paper doesn't move when I cut it. Oh, I forgot about the safety pins. I use safety pins for when I get closer to the end of the process and sometimes early on in the process. But generally, I do it when I get closer to the end of the process when it's time for me to do the free quilting. And I pin the front to the middle to the back all together after I already have all the layers done. I forget what that's called. Basting. It's for basting. That's what I think it's called. Okay. Now, I have a cutting mat, 2 rulers. Why do I have a cutting mat and 2 rulers? I will tell you. This looks like a whole lot of measuring things. I don't actually use the grid on my cutting mat most of the time. What I do use is this layout to keep it square, right? So I have 2 long ones only because I don't have a small square one, which I wish I did because it'd be easier to work with. But I will use this to line up whatever my material is to make sure I get a nice even square. And then I'll take this off and cut it. If that makes sense. Well, we're going to get to cutting pretty soon. Let me talk about my fabrics. But I'll do that in the next video. That way my basic video, the people who just skipped can join us.